Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another session of Mr. Smith's class. And I'm going to read this and give my thoughts, and here we go. There's a YouTuber named German in Venice, and he's a German guy who lives in LA somewhere. And if you don't know, Venice is a neighborhood in Los Angeles. It's along the beach, the famous Venice Beach, where Arnold Schwarzenegger, get to the chopper, used to work out. And he has a YouTube channel. This guy, German in Venice. And one of the things he does, he seems like a nice enough guy, but one of the things he does is he points out all of the homeless and tent cities and tent neighborhoods that are popping up all over LA. And if you don't know, Los Angeles, and I live here, and I can walk down the street, and I live in a pretty nice neighborhood, and I walk down the street and I see homeless people living under any overpass available. They set up tents, and so if you want to check it out, go over to German in Venice. He will show you the homeless situation, and it's getting worse. I see people parked in RVs on the streets, especially if you can find a neighborhood or an area in Los Angeles or in the surrounding cities. If you can find a street where they don't have restricted parking, where you can park there all night. Every morning when I head off to work, I see people sleeping in their cars. Right? I mean, it's bad. And according to some reports, we have over 25% unemployment in the United States at this point, which is worse than the Great Depression. Right? If you haven't figured it out yet, the stock market is a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's, you can, if you know what you're doing, you could probably make some money in it, but it doesn't reflect the real economy. We are in deep trouble. Okay, deep trouble. And if you haven't noticed, food prices, gas prices are going up, right? The items that people buy on a regular basis, needs. You can go to any neighborhood in LA, even in the valley areas, valley neighborhoods, and you will see homeless. Okay, and of course, Skid Row in downtown has always had a lot of homeless. That is a homeless area, and if you are not used to seeing something like that, if you ever actually visit Skid Row and walk around, you will be blown away. Anyway, so German in Venice pointed out this article, and I'm going to read it. It's from the Los Angeles Times. It says, Judge orders LA City and County to offer shelter to everyone on Skid Row by October of 2021. And this article was posted on April 20th, 2021, so about a month ago. A federal judge overseeing a sprawling lawsuit about homelessness in Los Angeles ordered the city and county Tuesday to offer some form of shelter or housing to the entire homeless population of Skid Row by October. Judge David O. Carter, his middle initial is O. By the way, it's not like O. Carter like O'Brien or something, right? David, middle initial O, last name Carter, granted a preliminary injunction sought by the plaintiffs in the case last week and is now telling the city and county that they must offer single women and unaccompanied children on Skid Row a place to stay within 90 days. It's nice to see they care about men. Help families within 120 days, and finally, by October 18th, offer every homeless person on Skid Row housing or shelter. Okay, so if women say life is unfair and men got it better, they are wrong. Let's continue. It says, it's unclear whether the city and county will challenge the order, which also calls for the city to put $1 billion into a escrow account, an idea that has raised concerns among city officials. Now, this is just my thoughts on this $1 billion in an escrow account. That means the city is going to use that money to buy property. Where are they going to buy property? Well, that seems to me another land grab. All right, it's just more of this communist Marxist takeover that's happening, where the government is going to own everything along with the big corporations. So where's the city, the government of LA City, where are they going to buy the land? They're going to buy it from people. And then they're allegedly going to set up homeless on this land. Just something to think about. All right, so let's move on. The ruling argues that LA City and County wrongly focused on permanent housing at the expense of more temporary shelter. Quote, knowing that massive development delays were likely while people died in the streets, unquote. That element of the order underscores the judge's skepticism of a core part of LA's current strategy to tackle homelessness. Quote, Los Angeles has lost its parks, beaches, schools, sidewalks, and highway systems due to the inaction of city and county officials who have left our homeless citizens with no other place to turn. Carter wrote in a 110-page brief, 110-page brief, sprinkled with quotes from Abraham Lincoln and an extensive history of how Skid Row was first created. Okay, I wonder if we really need all that over intellectualization, but since I haven't read the brief, I don't know. But he is right. If you check out German in Venice's YouTube channel, you'll see some beautiful parks. Echo Park, MacArthur Park, Venice Beach are all riddled with tents and homeless people. Okay. Quote, all of the rhetoric, promises, plans, and budgeting cannot obscure the shameful reality of this crisis, that year after year there are more homeless Angelenos, and year after year more homeless Angelenos die in the streets, unquote. Last year more than 1,300 homeless people died in Los Angeles County. Probably more than that, just not reported. In the last homeless count in January 2020, more than 4,600 unhoused people were found to be living on Skid Row. Right? Again, Skid Row is that area in downtown Los Angeles. About 2,500 in large shelters and 2,093 on the streets. They account for only slightly more than 10% of the city's overall homeless population, and it's not clear what Carter's order might mean for other parts of the city. The judge wrote that, quote, after adequate shelter is offered, unquote, he would allow the city to enforce laws to keep streets and sidewalks clear of tents so long as they're consistent with previous legal rulings that have limited the enforcement of such rules. That appears to only apply to Skid Row. Okay, that's interesting. Let's read on. Quote, he also ordered the county to offer, quote, support services to all homeless residents who accept the offer of housing, unquote, including placements in, quote, appropriate emergency, interim, or permanent housing and treatment services, unquote. The cost would be split by the city and county. Shouldn't have Obama's Affordable Care Act taken care of this? Right? Weren't we promised, or we thought we were promised some sort of socialized medicine where you could just walk in and get treatment? I guess that's never realized. And, it talks about, quote, appropriate emergency, interim, or permanent housing and treatment services. What are the treatment services for the homeless? Notice they're not really talking about giving them jobs. Let's read on. Rob Wilcox, a spokesman for the city's attorney's office, said Tuesday that city lawyers are reviewing the order. He declined to comment further. Skip Miller, partner at Miller Barandis law firm, which is the outside counsel for the county in the lawsuit, said the county is now evaluating our options, including possibility of an appeal. Previously, the county had asked to be removed from the case, arguing that it was about the city and that the county was aggressively responding to homelessness without any direction from the court. It cited efforts that included spending hundreds of millions of dollars annually through the Measure H sales tax and developing innovative strategies such as Project Room Key. Okay, Project Room Key is a state program that provides temporary funding for cities and counties to rent hotel rooms for homeless during the pandemic. That's not going over very well, okay? Oh, man. Somebody's making money off this scam, and nobody's helping the homeless. I'm sorry. What are they going to put them in hotel rooms? And then what? There are no jobs. You're just going to keep them in hotel rooms forever? They're never going to get jobs. Unless something different is done, because this is not going to work. The push for an injunction, quote, is an attempt by property owners and businesses to rid their neighborhood of homeless people, Miller said. Quote, there is no legal basis for an injunction because the county is spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year on proven strategies. All right. Matthew Umhofer, an attorney representing the plaintiffs, meaning the court order guys, the LA Alliance for Human Rights, said he and his clients were ecstatic. Yeah, I wonder if this guy really cares about the homeless. Carter's call for action was what they had been looking for when they filed the case, he said, and why they sought out Carter, who had overseen similar cases in Orange County in recent years, to preside over it. Quote, this is exactly the kind of aggressive emergency action that we think is necessary on the issue of homelessness in Los Angeles, unquote, Umhofer said. The Alliance is a coalition of downtown business owners and residents that filed the case in March 2020, accusing the city and county of breaching their duty to abate a nuisance, reducing property value without compensation, wasting public funds, and violating the State Environmental Act and state and federal acts protecting people with disabilities. Carter's order came the day that Mayor Eric Garcetti released his budget for the next fiscal year, which includes nearly $1 billion in spending on homelessness. The longtime federal judge also ordered that $1 billion, as represented by Mayor Garcetti, will be placed in escrow forthwith. Of the $1 billion in homeless spending planned by Garcetti, more than a third would come from Proposition HHH, the 2016 bond measure to build permanent housing for homeless residents. How's that going to work? Permanent housing? All right, that's what I wanted to talk about here. They want to build permanent housing. Garcetti aides that they expect the city will be building or developing 89 HHH projects over the next fiscal year with a total of 5,651 housing units. Whether Carter's order will disrupt those activities is unclear. In his order, the judge says he wants a report in 90 days of every developer receiving funds from HHH, as well as new regulations to limit the possibility of funds being wasted. At a press conference Tuesday afternoon, Garcetti declined to say whether the city would file an appeal of the order, saying he first wants to read it, but he suggested that Carter's order could slow down the construction of HHH projects. Quote, roadblocks masquerading as progress are the last things we need, he said. Because the $1 billion for homelessness doesn't yet exist, some of it hasn't arrived from Washington, and none of it has been approved by the city council for the coming year. Garcetti said he also fears the city will be asked instead to put some other source of money in the escrow account. Tax money? Maybe raising taxes? That's not going to go over well. For those of you that don't live in California, the taxes are redonkulous already. And people are sick of it. So that's going to be a problem. Carter has also asked for a number of reports from city and county officials about how money for combating homelessness has been and is currently being spent. He also ordered the city and county cease any sales or transfers of city or county property before such reports are provided. The lengthy ruling also skewered corruption scandals involving housing projects, quote, excessive delays and skyrocketing costs, unquote, under the Triple H bond measure, and LA's failure to seek federal reimbursement of Project Room Key rooms. Now, real quick, because I know I'm babbling with this, but I have heard there was a woman that lives in the neighborhood of Venice who had exposed that there were people making money off these bond measures and measures to house and help the homeless. It's just a money-making scheme for people. Meanwhile, the homeless are not being helped. Councilman Kevin De Leon, whose district includes Skid Row, welcomed the judge's decision. Although LA needs more clarity about setting aside $1 billion, he said, the tight time frame to offer shelter and housing to Skid Row residents, quote, lights a fire under the city to act with a real sense of urgency and to match the rhetoric with real outcomes to save lives, unquote. Quote, it's a strong shot across the bow, and he is expecting action, unquote, meaning Carter. Not continued negotiations or studying everything to death. Pete White, executive director of the Skid Row-based Los Angeles Community Action Network, which is an intervener in the case, said his organization has, quote, grown concerned that politicians are using this litigation to justify investment in emergency shelters instead of housing. Okay. Quote, we all know that shelters won't solve our housing crisis, and they definitely won't address the structural racism that got us here in the first place. Okay, I'm not sure what structural racism is, so if anybody knows what they mean by that, please let me know in the comments. Let's read on. Skid Row activist and resident Jeff Page echoed White, saying the tight window for moving people means they won't be going to permanent housing, but instead to, quote, dorm-style living that in and of itself is problematic, unquote. What's needed, he said, is more permanent housing in the neighborhood to be built as quickly as possible. Quote, we need more housing here. We need more services, unquote, he said. Now, it's interesting that this guy said dorm-style living. You do know that, like, in cities like LA, and I've heard it's in other cities as well, they're not building homes anymore. They're building these stack 'em and pack 'em apartment complexes where you have, and some of them I know don't even have kitchens, right? The powers that be, if you read the United Nations Agenda 21, they want us all packed into these, what they call sustainable living units, right? In crowded urban centers, because humans are such a scourge to the environment, right? So I know some, even though the economy is in the tank right now in Los Angeles, I know that they are still building. One thing they're still building is these stack 'em and pack 'em apartment complexes where they're going to have, stores and a Starbucks down on the first floor. So and then you go up to your apartment and you just buy their Soylent Green food packages or order some already pre-made food from someplace, and they're phasing out cooking. They're phasing out cooking. We got to start cooking more and growing our own food and so that we get the proper nutrition we need, because I don't trust these pre-packaged meals, even in reputable markets. Anyway, but I digress. Let's continue. In his order, Carter outlined historic forms of discrimination that had cut black people out of housing opportunities, including redlining, segregated systems of assistance during the Great Depression, highway construction that displaced black families, and criminalization that has disproportionately affected black communities. See, what bothers me about this is that this is Carter, since he's a federal government guy, right? He's basically saying here that, oh yeah, black folks have been discriminated against, and they have, but I'm not denying that. However, he's letting people know that he's for black people. Kind of like Biden did that, and Kamala Harris. And I know a lot of African Americans and black folks that are not falling for that anymore, right? It sounds like to me that this is a little bit of propaganda that's basically saying, hey, Big Brother will take care of black folks, right? The federal government will take care of black folks, okay? Now, what creeps me out about this is what a lot of the German government officials were saying when it came to the Jewish minorities in World War II. Yeah, we'll take we'll take care of you. Okay, this is something to think about. That's all. Let's read on. Racial inequality has continued to color government handling of the crisis. Carter concluded, opining that current city and county policies compound and perpetuate structural racism, threatening the integrity of black families in Los Angeles and forcing a disproportionate number of black families to go unhoused. But not to worry, Big Brother is going to take care of you. Okay? Nobody needs that. What we need is people who are independent and strong and can take care of their families and their communities, and we need small businesses to be run, and we help the people around us. Right? That's what we need. We don't need Big Brother to come in and take care of us. This is creeping me out. And this is the reason why I'm doing this video, because I'm going to pose something at the end here. By the way, I think this is kind of connected to when the governor of Michigan, whatever that thing is, when it said about a year ago in a very unscientific statement that COVID affects black, Hispanic, and Native Americans more. There is no way there is any data that backs that up. That is a lie. How could she say that? That's a lie. So what that tells me is that there's something really, really going on here that's wrong. This whole thing stinks. Right? From the planned pandemic to the needle drugs that they want everybody to take, and now to this order that LA's got to house the homeless. And right? It's creeping me out. It has shades of Germany 1930s. The judge has previously compared the situation to the aftermath of some seminal civil rights case, Brown versus Board of Education, saying there are times when the federal judiciary may need to act after a long period of inaction by local government officials. Again, here we go with Big Brother coming in and expanding their power by telling that the local governments don't know what they're doing. Lori Levinson, a professor at Loyola Law School. All right, Loyola Law School is a Jesuit-run school. Watch my video on feminism and witchcraft, and I rounded out by pointing out the Jesuits. You should really learn about the Jesuits. Okay? And one of the main guys that started the Jesuits and was fervor back in the day was a guy named Loyola. So Loyola Law School, which is in LA, it's near Marina Del Rey. Yeah. Okay, it's near the airport. It's a Jesuit-run school, so yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing that she's from there. But she said, continuing on, she called the 110-page order a, quote, deep dive into the problems of homelessness in Los Angeles and an expression of Carter's frustration with how the city and county have responded to this crisis, unquote. She noted that judges in the South during the 1950s and 1960s had used similarly expansive injunctions to make desegregation a reality, and in other cases to implement prison reform. Of course, she's implying that Carter's order is good for black folks. by saying this, right? That's what I'm interpreting this quote as being. She wasn't sure how a higher court might rule if this case ends up getting appealed, but it said it was, quote, certainly a landmark decision. Quote, it is an open question whether the appellate court will step in. As Judge Carter acknowledges, there is usually a hearing before such an order. However, he has loaded up his decision with facts, and he says obviate, nice word, the need for a hearing. The judge has made a bold move, unquote. News of the injunction has not trickled down to the streets of Skid Row Tuesday, but people reacted favorably when informed of it. Hassan Salim, 58, who was sitting outside his tent on 6th Street, said he would take housing, quote, right away if offered, even if it takes 100 days. Still, he remained skeptical. I wouldn't mind waiting if it was true, he said. I don't know if it's true or not. Quote, it's better than how they used to do it when they just take your stuff and put you to jail, said Peaceful Bolden, who was standing with a small group across the street from the Los Angeles Mission. Quote, at least they're trying, unquote. But Bolden said she did not think housing alone would be enough. Quote, some of these people are just refugees from whatever life they used to have. They need mental health. They need hospice. Some of them, a lot of them don't want to leave because they don't want to be under anyone's rules. There's a little more here. Andy Bales, president and CEO of the Union Rescue Mission, said he had heard the news and hailed it as, quote, the, quote, wall of reality. Wall of reality. That the city and county are finally running into. Oh, I see. In other words, the reality of the homeless. Quote, it's what I came to Union Rescue Mission to accomplish, unquote. I've always wanted to decentralize Skid Row and regionalize services throughout the county. My hope is this will do that. Okay, so that's the article. Whew. Boy, I spent a lot of time on that. Sorry about that. Okay, an update. Federal court pauses order to offer shelter to everyone on LA Skid Row by fall. Okay, I'm not going to read that, but that's been paused. You can read that. That was in the LA Times. Early May. Now, here's an article from Fox News. Los Angeles residents oppose plan to move homeless to beaches and parks. Okay. So my point is, nobody wants the homeless in this. Nobody wants the homeless in their areas. Okay. Here's another article, and this was May 11th, so a week ago. The governor's plan has a goal of solving family homelessness within 5 years. What governor are we talking about? Good old Gruesome Newsom. This thing that is governor over California. Let's read what it says here. In what was lauded as the single business investment any state has ever made to address homelessness, Governor Gavin Newsom on Tuesday announced a $12 billion proposal to create affordable housing, increase mental health services, which means get them on drugs, and fund other programs to get people off the street. Okay. Well, if the state government, this is the state government now, is going to spend $12 billion to create affordable housing, that means they got to find land to put this housing on. Seems to me like another government land grab. I wouldn't be surprised if they force people off of ranch lands and stuff like that. Newsom made the announcement at the Kearney Vista Apartments, one of two former San Diego hotels that were purchased. There you go. So these hotels were purchased by the government and converted into housing with funding from the state's Project Home Key program introduced by the governor last year. What we're announcing here today is truly historic. It's unprecedented, not just in California history. No. What we're announcing here today is simply unprecedented in American history. Well, yeah, we don't have, that's because our economy is collapsing. This place is collapsing. While admitting to sounding almost hyperbolic, Newsom said his description was factual, as the proposal was many times greater than any state had committed to addressing homelessness. Yeah, it's a land grab. His appearance in San Diego came a day after the state announced a projected $75.5 billion budget surplus, and Newsom proposed sending $600 checks to middle-income residents. Wow, more government, don't work, we'll just send you money. We'll take care of you. Oh, gosh. If approved by the legislatures, blah, 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 okay, I'm not going to read the rest, but gruesome Newsom wants $12 billion, and they got to buy land for it, so where are they going to get that land from? Who are they going to take it from? It'll be interesting to see if that goes through. It sounds pretty fishy to me. I'm not going to read the rest, and I'm going to tell you why it sounds pretty fishy to me. And what I'm about to say is I hope I'm wrong. Because what I'm about to say is this. These homeless shelters that they're planning on building, what are you going to do with the homeless once you put them in these shelters? What are they going to do? Are you going to let the homeless out to walk the streets, to go and come back as they please? They got nowhere else to go. They won't have jobs. So what are you going to do with them? Nobody wants them around. I'm going to say this, and I hope I'm wrong. At best, if these homeless shelters go through, they're going to be maybe work labor camps, at best. At worst, they might be concentration camps. I hope I'm wrong. But there's so many parallels to what's going on in the United States right now to 1930s Germany and what was going on during the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia with Stalin and the gulags and the concentration camps being built. Now, I wanted to read this. And again, I'm hoping I'm wrong. And again, this is one of these things that I want to get an update. We got to keep. I'm begging people to just keep a watchful eye out and start thinking about this. I don't think this is a good thing for the homeless at all. Now, and our government wants absolute control. They're sick people. And look what it says here. I got an article on the history of the Terrazin concentration camp. Terrazin was one of the greatest deceptive ploys used by the Nazis during World War II. Located 40 miles northwest of Prague, the town of Terrazin, was first converted into a Jewish ghetto in December 1941. See the parallel? They're going to take areas and convert them into housing for the homeless, a homeless ghetto, if you will. The Terrazin ghetto was used as a, quote, model ghetto to deceive the outside world into thinking that Jewish prisoners were treated fairly and given satisfactory living conditions by the Nazis. Terrazin was falsely presented as a generous gift from Adolf Hitler. In this town, Jewish people could live autonomously, govern themselves, and express themselves through art, music, lectures, and other intellectual endeavors during the war. That's what they were told. However, the real Terrazin was far from the model town promoted by Nazi propaganda. Of the 1,440,000 Jews that were imprisoned in Terrazin, 35,000 died within the ghetto from starvation and disease. Another 88,000 were deported again to concentration camps in the east, such as Auschwitz, and inevitably perished. Okay, I'm not going to read this whole thing because this is getting long. Who was sent to Terrazin? Terrazin was converted from an Austrian town to a Jewish ghetto in 1941, being 2/3 of a mile long and wide. The ghetto included a church, school, town square, approximately 200 homes, 14 large barracks, blah, 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 blah. The prisoners that were sent to Terrazin often included decorated Jewish veterans from World War I, intellectuals. Okay, we got all that. Half Jews. Okay, so there's others, blah, 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 blah. But here's the important part. Terrazin was considered the kingdom of deceit. From the very beginning, Terrazin was falsely advertised to Jews as a self-governing, autonomous town where Jewish peoples could live in relative comfort until the war passed. Let's haul the homeless off to this wonderful area. Housing until the economy gets better. Okay, I'm just seeing the parallels here, and I'm just reporting it. Again, you know where I'm going with this, and I hope I'm wrong. But if you're homeless out there, and I'm not going to read the rest, you can read the rest. Just go to the History of Terrazin concentration camp. It's at a website called No, that's not it. Sorry. Just Google the history of Terrazin Terrazin Terezin concentration camp, and they even have a Terrazin propaganda film. So the reason why I brought this out and babbled all this whole time, 35 minutes, is keep your eyes and ears open and just consider that this might be the horrible reality of what's going on. I mean, after all, what are you going to do with the homeless? There are no jobs for them, right? And the economy's not going to get better for a long, long time, if ever. So please, don't get into debt, right? You don't have to go to college. You don't have to, just don't get into debt. Be a free person. Don't owe anybody anything. There's nothing wrong with getting a crappy job somewhere for right now. Get your head out of the fantasy world, right? Don't go into debt going off to college. Don't go into debt buying the latest car. Live below your means, because you don't want to end up homeless, because this could be your fate. They could be hauling the homeless off at some point to a, quote, homeless shelter and make it seem like it's a really nice place when it turns out to be a concentration camp. And like I said, I could be wrong. But I'm just asking everybody out there, is it a possibility? And I believe it is, and so I think we should just keep our eyes on it and see what develops. All right, this is Mr. Smith. Let's wrap this up. Class is over. And, think about coming to the Most High God. Pray to Him and ask Him if He's real. And He can get you through this. He can get all of us through this. So, anyway, class is over. And like I said one more time, I hope I'm wrong with this one. All right, talk to you soon. Please like and subscribe.